we're speaking with ZouZou Mansour today from Soraia on our next episode. Sorry. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. How about yourself?
Yeah. Yep. A little rattled this morning for some reason, but other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah, I get it.
You're in Philadelphia still, right?
Actually, I'm in South Jersey now, but I was
South
in
Jersey.
Philadelphia. Yes.
Okay. Whereabouts in South Jersey?
It's more like kind of like Pittman. It's Gloucester County area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just moved here last October.
Okay. Why the move from Philly?
I made the realization that my whole life I've lived in Philly and I've driven the same streets and I've seen the same things and I've traveled so much that I know when I jump into a different area I've never been, like my brain just comes alive. So I moved here. I have no knowledge of it. I have no preconceived notions, just moved here, and it's a lot of farm areas. It's really nice. So it's good.
Did you, I mean, because as a musician, I would imagine that's difficult. You're leaving behind friends, and I'm guessing the band probably still lives in the Philly area.
Actually, oddly enough, one of the band members lives in Philly and the other three of us live in Jersey. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's
relocated a bit, but it's all like in the past year, honestly. It's so weird. Yeah. We replaced our guitar player and he lives in Jersey, but he's from Philly as well. We're all from Philly. So
yeah.
Three of us in Jersey, one of us in Philly still.
Okay. All right. So you've enjoyed the move? I
have. Eventually I'd like to move to New York City, but I'm good here for now.
Yeah, that's quite an undertaking. Doing some quick apartment searches over the last year, I noticed it's not exactly cheap.
Yeah, no.
And considering the way things are right now too, moving is also completely out of the question.
Yeah, it's just adding stress onto things. But I'm happy where I am. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you're
not to interview you, but where are you? What area of the country?
Oh, I'm outside of Chicago.
Oh, cool. I love Chicago. So
yeah, it's cool. I've thought about making a move myself, but it's the only place I've known, so I don't know where I would go. And as the years creep on, it gets a little stranger to move out of this, move somewhere and start your whole life over again.
Yeah.
I'm almost 50, so.
Oh.
So it just seems a little stranger to uproot myself. But I've considered it. What was I going to say? Oh, I'm sorry. So the new album came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
And you guys are a pretty hardcore touring band. I have to imagine that this has affected you in not the way that you were hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, because our album came out in March, we started, usually in January, February, we spend writing. That's kind of like we are in a groove now of what we do with different months of the year. And January and February are writing months or studio months for us to go in and record whatever we've been writing since summer. But this year we had it come out Friday, the 13th of March, which was the Tuesday before that was when COVID-19 was announced as a global pandemic. And we were already on tour at that point. But we started touring in January. So we did like weekend tours in different areas of the country. And then we went full throttle out to West Coast tour early March. And I remember we did this March 6th gig at this place we play a lot in LA called the Redwood. And it was mobbed. I mean, mobbed. It was a big show. And I remember like hearing about COVID at that point, but it really not being like within a week, it was the biggest concern on the planet. But before that was the Friday before our release. And it just seemed pretty normal. By that Wednesday was when NBA announced the season was off. And then by the next morning, everything, was starting. So it affected us in a way that was odd, honestly. Like our touring had to stop, which is hard for us because we tour, but we had something to promote. So we were kind of in a unique position in a really good way too, because we just had a new record release. We couldn't tour behind it, but we figured we can do a lot of things otherwise. And we did a lot of radio, a lot of interviews, a lot of we sold well. We had a lot more listeners on Spotify and streaming outlets like that than we would have had, got added to a lot more playlists. And I think that was partially, you know, a new record and maturing as a band, but also because of what was going on in the country and in the world, is more people could listen and share and were receptive to the arts, I think, a little more, especially in the beginning months. I don't know. I feel like people were watching more movies and TV and also listening to more music and more open to it. So it had its setbacks, but it also had its advantages, you know.
Yeah, and since then, though, you guys have done. How many live stream shows have you done?
Not many. We couldn't meet up with Travis, who's my main co-writer, who lives in Philly. He lives with someone who's at risk, and so we didn't start rehearsing again until May. And right after we did, we were offered a lot of things, and we did a lot of pre-recorded things from our rehearsal space for just, you know, radio stations and festivals. And then we did 2 of our own, one acoustic in June and one we just did last week, full band. And then we did one with the Bowery Electric in July. So we did like one a month since June, I guess.
Okay.
So not many, only because we've been writing a lot and rehearsing a lot of the new songs, but also we've tried to stay connected in other ways through Facebook Lives. Like I'm going to do some Zoom stuff coming up, just ways to stay connected with the fans. Because what I find is that's what they really want. They want the music too, but I think they want the connection more than anything else. I think we all do. So I'm just trying to like kind of feel out what they want and what I'm capable of and what we're capable of, and respond in like.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I know that some people have been doing more frequent stuff, like your label mate Jesse Mallon has been doing weekly stuff from the Bowery Electric, which has been pretty cool to watch. But yeah, it's still a new thing, you know. I don't think anybody's got a real handle on doing. More people are doing it, but you know, I think even Metallica did like a live stream.
Yeah.
You know, but so people are venturing into it, but it's not exactly road tested, so to speak, yet, and it hasn't been fully fleshed out. But it might be the thing that like certain clubs in certain cities might have to, you know, start considering, like just, you know, inviting people in every couple of days or something, maybe to do some sort of live stream of artists in each, you know, wherever city they live in. But, you know, in your case, you know, that with your band and some others, it's probably a little more difficult to just get everybody together if everybody's not in the same, you know, basic area.
Yeah, I think now that we're together, it's good. We're safe. We, you know, mask, we socially distance. We just were in the studio. So we all got COVID tested before we went in, and we all wore masks, and it was actually fine. Like it was uncomfortable a little bit because, you know, but as you're working together, you're kind of like getting closer anyway, just by nature, but you're being safe. Yeah. So I think we've all navigated it well. I think one of the things I'm seeing, like when you mentioned Jesse Mallon, Jesse's, you know, the Bowery Electric gig we did was part of the Save Our Stages, you know, Jesse's club, Bowery Electric. Yeah. He's one of the owners, and they set up an amazing like 10 camera shoot where it's like you're seeing different angles all the time. It's not one steady cam. Right. And the sound was immaculate. We had a guy like running our sound, but he was also running the internet sound, and everybody that saw it was just saying that's the best thing we've seen since live stream started. So Jesse's got the understanding of the technical aspect of it. And after that, it was difficult for us to even go like, we're not going to do that quality. We just did that quality. It's going to be hard. But also I think it's really important now that like we may lose our home clubs, and we don't want to do that. We want somewhere to go back to. So I think if anything, at the time where, whether, you know, these clubs, it's a good idea they do live streams, and that the bands partner with them and that they promote like never before, you know, and it's successful when you do. When you treat it like a normal show, it's not going to happen because you don't have that one-on-one experience. It was a little difficult to get that energy up to do it because there was no live audience feeding it back, you know, but I knew who was on the other side. I think ultimately we're just all, I think every band is doing what they're capable of doing at this point for their band and in their situation. accommodations, which is all different. So it's a struggle, but it's a necessary. It's going to be through the fall at this point. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Looking at the way things are, I don't know for anything how, how when everything can go back. I mean, movie theaters, except for New York and most of California, have opened, but box office, even at the limited, admission, still isn't what it would be if everybody went out for that limited seating. It's like I think people are still really worried, despite a lot of things being done. And I know some people have been doing outdoor concerts, and the local H I knew did a drive-in concert semi-recently.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are options, but we're also now getting into most of the country being in winter conditions, so that the outdoor concerts become completely, not happening. I don't know. I mean, it would be nice to see somebody kind of, like in this day and age, we need what was his name? The guy from San Francisco, the acclaimed promoter. Oh, I forget.
From the 60s?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I can see
the Bill Graham?
Yes, something Graham.
Yeah.
Was it Bill Graham?
It might be Bob. I don't know. I can't believe I can't think of his name, but
I can't think of it either.
We need somebody like that to kind of take the reins and really put something together I mean, so far Jesse's has got, in my opinion, the best setup.
He really does.
And I think we need more of that for artists to really get out there and be able to perform, and for some of it to go to the club too. I mean, obviously what we really need is government assistance for all of it, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. But I do what you said with Jesse. What I appreciate is that he's going over and above to keep his venues open, but also, he's trying to help his artists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was really helpful to us, and it also helped our fans have a good experience. Everybody left happier. And if anything, I feel like what everybody needs is that, because what I'm seeing is when people do go out, they're scared. You know what I mean? Like there's a definite, I don't know what people are going to call it when this is over, or what, if they have a name for it now, but people are scared to their first time going out, their first time going to a show. It's going to be, it's going to take time. But when you said about the box offices, I mean, we all want this sense of normalcy, right? We want to go back to, like, I would love to go to a movie right now. And I know what I need to feel safe. And I know some theaters aren't doing that. So I'm not going to theaters. You know what I mean? It's a hard time for those businesses because the country is very divided on topics that are really science related. And it's a shame because it's hurting. It's really hurting the arts. Like we can't have big shows until something changes. Like, and I think people forget that when they're thinking just of themselves or their convenience is like, it's really, this pandemic has made people have to be considerate of others. And has shown when they're not considerate of others.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can get mad at it, or like I would get mad at it. Now I'm just like, you know what? It's really just shown me who people are, and that's okay. And it's shown me who I am, which is really important because I can only affect the sphere of influence in my realm, right? All of it affect the people that are closest to us. And it's definitely changed me. And I have to say, for the better, I know who I am, I know what I stand for. And I know, I just know that, what's right, and what's good for humanity, and kind of been more kind of plugged into that, more interested in helping others than I've been in the past, more time for it too. There's a lot of less fortunate people than us. I mean, we're sitting here without COVID-19 right now. So
right. Yeah. And, we each have some place to live, and, we have the ability to be on the internet talking to each other. And a lot of that's really brought, I mean, cause it's a sad state of affairs what's going on right now in general. This has been one of the toughest years. Somebody said it was like the plague of 1918 with the the kind of the horror of the uprising and the demonstrations of the 69, and throw in a few other things, a few other monumental aspects of the past into one year, and it's like it's no wonder we're all upset or depressed or just trying to figure out a way to hang on.
Yeah, and I think whatever your motivating factor is, whether it be fear or love, and that's not to be like too spiritual or anything, but it really comes down to that. When I'm afraid and I'm worried, I'm easier to anger and easier to judgment, and then I feel kind of isolated and alone. And then when I'm more like, we're all in this together, no matter what our thoughts or feelings about things, we're all going through it. Nobody's exempt from it. It's kind of unifying in that way, so, and I think everything, like, maybe I'm like a hopeless romantic in that sense, but I think everything that's happening, even the tragic aspects, will lead to, like, I really studied the pandemic in 1918. So it's just like, what's it going to be? Like, what happened after? Like, when was it resolved? Like, just to get some perception of what's, that's 100 years ago, but still, how did that resolve with less resources and less knowledge and less scientific advancements? Like, how did that resolve? And that whole flapper period came after it. Like, there was like that snapping back of the rubber band. Like, it was like, you can only pull it so far before it snaps back and it launches. So I always think when I try to stay in the day.
Yeah.
When I can't, I just try to go like, at the end of this, it's going to be awesome. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like a new renaissance.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the one hope I've had from it, is that spiritual, cultural, artistic, and social renaissance after this is what I'm hoping for.
Absolutely.
We need a giant sage tree to burn and spread over the country, basically.
We do. That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, just burn sage everywhere.
Now I want to burn sage.
Just because it's like the only, I don't know. I mean, we've got 3 point whatever months left in this year, and I tell you, I don't think there's ever been a year people will want to say goodbye to more than this one.
Agreed. And there was big hopes for 2020 for this one. So
yeah. In 2019, we're like, oh, 2020 is the year.
It happened, all of it. And
I thought 2019 sucked. So 2019 was just January.
Yeah. You are not wrong, my friend.
I know, and it's just like it's one constant kick in the crotch after another, and especially what happened, on Friday with the news of Ginsburg dying. It was like, that's for me. That's so far the worst news of the year. The pandemic takes place second because I don't know how political you are, but I try not to be in interviews, but it's just like that one's too fresh for me.
It's hard not to sway that way with what's going on in our country. It's really hard not to. And I've gotten so angry that I've had to really take a look at myself and like, what makes me that angry? And I was like, okay, I have my small sphere of influence. I can't change the world, but change a few lives for sure. And that is what I can do. And I think to myself, like, with Ginsburg dying, what it did for me was made me revisit a lot of what she accomplished, because it's been in the news so much. And there was a big obituary. It's in the New York Post this morning. I get the everyday update from New York Post and CNN. And the New York Post was talking about, you got to read this obituary on Ruth's life. And I started reading it. I'm like, my God. Like, that woman had no influence when she started all this. Like, there was it wasn't like she was a Supreme Court justice. She was just a woman who came out of college with great grades and couldn't get a job in her field.
Yeah.
And the way she fought, there was I forget the name of the case, where it wasn't just, a lot for unemployment and women who've been unemployed, but also men who've taken care of their moms or dads who weren't getting the same benefits that women were. So it's like, this one person affected so much. It just makes me go like, I was genuinely sad. And also, like, oddly honored that I was around when she died. I don't know if that sounds weird. It probably does, but I'm just glad to be alive in this time when a woman like that has made such a mark over decades and decades.
Yeah.
Anyone that she hasn't is straight up crazy.
Oh, for sure. For
So
sure.
anyways, a bad word to say about her,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just that one shook me because it's like I knew how important it was for her to be here until next year, and I know how things go, but without getting too much into a dive in that nonsense. I mean, I'm usually pretty good with keeping that stuff at bay, but that one just because it feels raw at the moment.
There's really a good article this morning in New York Post about what it means. Because I think you're talking about replacing them on the Supreme Court before the election. And they go into a detailed description of what it means. And it really was helpful to me because I knew what it meant, but then reading that, it made it based on history and what's happened, it kind of made me feel a little differently in terms of what needs to happen for there not to be an appointment. And then if there is an appointment, what that means as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like, the one thing we can say about politics that's not to whatever is whatever the word might be anymore, but is that, this is a key election and people need to vote. And I think that's the big thing. And I feel like I have noticed on both sides because I've tried to be understanding of friends who don't think like I think. And I've been amazingly understanding when I feel so strongly, but I think people are a lot more knowledgeable about what is important to them. If not about what the actual facts are, they're at least knowledgeable about what's important to them, which is a step in my mind. Like, you know what I mean? Most people during elections that I talk to don't really care very much.
Yeah, I think this is one where a lot of people care about it.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Definitely. Yeah, everybody should vote. Anybody who watches this should go vote. It doesn't matter. Just vote.
Please
Something
vote.
we all should be doing.
Please.
Well, to get off of that, describe a bit about how your band has gone through changes since its inception, and where you feel you started to where you feel you are now as a band.
Well, I know since I was little, I always wanted to be a part of a group. I wanted that idea. Like I talk a lot about this book, The Outsiders, I read as a kid, who I always felt like an underdog, but I always felt like if you had pals that were kind of like loved you for who you were with all your good and bad, that, you could get through anything, like a family, and a loyalty and like, I'll be there no matter what kind of thing. So I always had that vibe with friendships, with growing up. And, I knew by sophomore year of high school, I wanted to be in a touring band. Like, I knew it. Like, we go to play nursing homes and I'd be like, this is what I want to do for a living, And from the inception, I mean, I honestly, it started very innocently. Like, I wanted to sing songs at open mics. Like, I didn't have an aspiration to anything. I just wanted to sing. And I wanted to sing well, like, right away. And I wanted to learn to songwrite because somebody had told me that to be a great singer, you have to sing words that mean something to you, and which means ultimately you're going to have to write your own material. And that just was something I accepted as truth. And I started doing that. And so I started like pretty humble beginnings. And then I started to want to have a band and play out and play to people and have that interaction. And from the first time I did, one of our first gigs ever was right before CBGB's closed in 2006. And I'll never forget it. It was the thing that kind of launched me into wanting to do it. I stood on a stage to Patti Smith and the Ramones and Joan Jett and New York Dolls and like all the bands that, came before me that had such a, rawness to them and made me feel alive watching their videos and stuff. I just felt like this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do with my life. I don't care if I'm broke or I'm rich. This is what I want to do. And so I pursued it pretty heavily. But, we learned. I brought our first recording to a friend of mine. He said, you need a producer. I started working with a producer. That was a big learning experience. And we've gone through a million bandmates. Travis Smith, who's my co-writer, my main co-writer is because I've written with other people, but I feel like we're really good at it. We're good at it, and we love doing it together. So it's just, I could never imagine Soraia without him, but he's been in it with me since the get-go. He's the only one. Everybody else has changed. In the past 4 years, we've had the same core, drummer, bass, and me. And then the guitarist just changed. We had him for 4 years, and he got married and wanted to kind of have a more sedentary, stable livelihood in life. And so we got on Nick Seditious, who's our new guitarist for a year now, and he's been great. We just recorded with him. He was amazing. So it's changed member wise, but if anything, it's grown in wisdom. It's grown in what I've wanted to accomplish. I've been on huge stages. I've been on small stages. I've played to like 2 people. I've played to 25,000 is probably the most we've played to. And I can do either. And I love them both. I tend to like 1,000 to 1,200 seat places, 500 seat places a lot more because there's intimacy. So I've learned about myself as an artist and what I'm comfortable doing and what I feel comfortable in, like what setting. I've worked with some of my heroes, like writing wise, performance wise. I've learned a lot that partnering with other artists is important. Helping other artists that don't know as much as you yet is important.
Yeah.
It reconnects you with why you started. And I think if you're not aspiring in being more honest and growing as a songwriter and as a performer and learning in the studio, then it becomes mundane and routine and boring. And doesn't matter what level of success you have unless you're continuing to grow as an artist. It's, you know, my happiest moments are when I'm growing, when I'm in the studio, when I'm writing. When we write something, I have like a powerful writing experience, you know. So my joys have changed from the beginning to now. Like my joy was just in getting a show and playing to anybody or playing to no one. I didn't care. Like I just wanted to play. And now my joys are in accomplishments in songwriting, and personal more than outward validation, but outward validation's nice. Interacting with fans and friends is something I absolutely thrive on. I've learned, and that wasn't a thing in the beginning. And working with people that not only have a love and passion for what they do, but are inspired and inspiring to work with is so important. And I wouldn't have cared in the beginning. I'd be like, just put new person in that spot, you know? It keeps you kind of on your toes in terms of wanting more for yourself and following a path that leads you to what you want next, you know, like the next step in what do I grab next to get up the mountain kind of thing. So
what would you say would be next, you know, your next kind of goal or desire for the band?
I think when we go back out, I definitely want to play shows, maybe not tour as much, but tour in with a little more focus. I feel like we were in a routine of this is where we play, this is where we go, and if people show up, great. If they don't, no big deal. It's a show is a show. And I think I become more interested in getting quality music out. I want to play bigger rooms for sure. I feel like we've gotten to that place where that's not just something a wish, but a reality. So I want to focus on partnering with more agents that want more than just to fill a hole, I guess is what, you know what I mean? In the schedule. I want to work with other artists in terms of like other singers. Like I want to do more partnering with other singers, our whole band. We've done a couple during this quarantine and I've loved it. And the band's loved it. So I want to do more of that. I want to be open to that, and just continue to write and put out the best music we can and keep working as a group in a collaborative and a way that is inspiring to all of us. I think, you know, next up is we just finished recording a single and B-side. We have to actually go back in tomorrow, but I want to record an album. I want to get this album finished being written. I want to record it. And you know, I just want to, you know, just building, exposing the music to more and more people, and partnering with artists that want that same thing. And no, I also really enjoy, not to like continue talking forever, but
no, you're good.
I really enjoy, like, when little Steven came into my life. He's our label head, and he's also produced us. He's written with me, and he's written for the band. And when he came in, it was so inspiring, and I learned so much. Like, I love that kind of mentoring situation, and I feel like I keep wanting to have those too. Like, not every day, obviously, but every few years, I'd like to meet another artist who wants to like collaborate, mentor, and grow in an artistic way.
Yeah.
The artistic ways. I'm like a lifelong learner kind of person. Like, I like.
Well, I think that's important. I think if you stop searching, maybe you're not reading a new book every week or whatever, but if you stop searching for something new, like like during this quarantine, for example, I rediscovered a love for baseball because it was something positive, and it was something new to watch every time, and there was suspense and there was positive, especially with my team. I follow the White Sox, and they're doing like amazing this year. So it's this like real intensely positive thing. Or, getting into jazz late in life, or, there's always something that new that you can find, to grow your spirit and grow your creativity, I think. And I think that's what you're trying to get at to some degree.
Yeah, I think like you have to remain that like kid where anything's possible and everything's exciting and everything's a surprise. Like if we can maintain that well into our, last 2 years of life, then we've had a pretty successful life, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think once you think you've learned everything, I don't think that's a good sign. I think there's always something new that can, pique your interest and let your brain and heart follow,
Yeah, like when you were saying about baseball, like when you said you refound it, like when had you left it? Like
probably when I was before high school.
See, so like that, that's exciting. That sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's like I thought I was going to be a baseball player, then I thought I was going to be a musician. I was a drummer for a long time. Then I thought I was going to be a filmmaker, and then my life really went in a different way. So I've been writing about, everything for the last 20 years, but I'm actually trying to write a script and finish one. So, just trying to take advantage of the time I have left in this world, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's every day is a new. There's like a thing I actually have, which probably seems religious, but it's not. It's enjoy.
I can't even see it.
It says enjoy the miracle of every day, every new day. It's like every day the other one's dead. Move on to the next one.
Right. Yeah. There was a lot. I mean, not to get too far into myself, but a lot of this is stemmed from getting divorced 5 years ago. So it's like I kind of had to concentrate just on myself instead of worrying about how my life affected someone else's, and so that's taken a lot of growth, I guess, to get to.
Yeah, I think out of our biggest losses comes our biggest growth. It's like it's inevitable. That's one thing you can always look
because if you don't, you're just, I mean, you might as well be dead, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's no point. Well, you mentioned you touched on little Steven, and I am. In fact, this is how I came to know you. I am a huge fan of his Sirius XM channel. And that's how whenever you guys are on, whenever you're on a coolest new song, I'm like, I know this is going to be good. I'm at that point. And it's like, because I was talking to another label mate of yours the other day, and I liked her new single too. And I said, I told her, I said, there's sometimes I don't like the coolest song of the week. It's like, normal. I don't want to hear it 85 times in a week, so, but if it's a Soraia song, I'm like, I'm there,
Yes.
Yeah. But honestly, being an older guy that used to write about the music scene and at some point didn't think that would ever happen, but I fell out of, new music. You're probably my favorite new band.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean,
Really?
just well, because you guys seem fresh, but you also harken back to eras I like, but and you're tough too in a melodic way, which I love. I mean, as a kid, I was a huge Joan Jett fan, and not to paint you in a corner or anything, but I mean, you guys kind of have that similarity in terms of tough and melodic,
Yeah, well, we tour with her. We play with her a lot. So
Yeah,
she's one of my heroes.
awesome.
So she influenced me, and Steven's been influential in that. Like he connected us, and she's to me the warrior example of if there wasn't her. Again, we talked about Ruth Ginsburg at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
If there wasn't a Joan Jett, there certainly would not be a Soraia.
Right.
Absolutely not. And and for that matter, like if there wasn't a Steven, if there wasn't a White Stripes, if there wasn't a Heart, there's so many bands that
Yeah.
The women though made me know I could do it, and that I didn't feel, I always felt different, but I embraced it because of seeing what they did. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget before the first show when we opened for, which was a couple years ago now, October of 18 was the first time we opened for, and I watched the Bad Reputation documentary the night before, and I was like, oh man, this woman, and she's been around since the 70s. Like,
yeah,
I mean, who's lasted that? Like, I mean, other bands have lasted that long, but like that every decade, it's just, she's grown, and but at the same time, she's staying true to who she is. She's just amazing. I can't say enough about her.
No, I know. And I saw her on, I only went to one Warped Tour, but it was one where Helmet reunited, I think, and then she was on it. And man, I mean, it was a little while ago now, but still, considering I grew up on her, as a solo artist, I thought she was tougher than most of the bands on the Warped Tour, I thought, and I was like, this is awesome to see her just rock it out, and that documentary made me remember how much of a crush I had on her as a kid too. Like, I had a real, and I was only like 10 when she, broke out. So I was like, it was pretty early to have a solid crush on somebody.
It's hard not to. She honestly, what was I going to say about her? I heard her voice and I was like, I said this to her, and I thought as I was saying it, because I've never been intimidated by, I've met a lot of people in what I do, but also just, when I go to concerts and stuff, I've met a lot of artists. No one ever intimidated me like I saw her, I walked down the hallway, I saw her, and I ran back in the room, and her, Meryl Laguna, who's married to Kenny, they helped her with Blackheart Records, their Blackheart Records. She said, get out here, come meet Joan. And I was like, she's like a smaller person, but I was terrified. But the first thing I said to her was, you saved my life, which isn't too much to say to a person. And also I said to her, I heard your voice. And as soon as I heard your voice, I was like, what is that? Like, I was like, maybe that didn't come out right. I meant like, what is that in a good way? Like, it was so unique, so different. And you could hear that passion. Like, I think Michael Jackson had that. When I hear his songs too, I hear that spit. You know what I mean? It's like a spit, but it's melody, and it's tough, but it's vulnerable. It's like that two-pronged artist thing. I feel like Chris Cornell had that too. Like, there's certain artists that I think of when I think of that. They were tough, but they were also really vulnerable. And they showed it in their songs, like Crimson and Clover versus, I Love Rock and Roll, one of the biggest songs of all time. But with Soundgarden is like, or Chris Cornell, when I heard, him cover, what's the song he covered? Patience by Guns N' Roses. I heard that for the first time the other night, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
God, the diversity. Elvis was like that. I could end up talking forever. You should.
No, I get that. No, and I could too. It's interesting. You're like the second person to bring up Cornell, and I wasn't a huge. I liked Soundgarden a lot, and I liked Chris's stuff. I got to see them play at Lollapalooza when they reunite, which was cool. But I got the chance to talk to him once, and that's one of those things. It's like I would say that's probably a top 10 conversation I had, because I don't get to talk to people, in my career. I haven't been able to talk to people quite that big. You know what I mean? So being able to was a really real big experience, and he was just a sweet guy. And you know, sometimes I think about people, and it's like, you know, damn, I just wish they could have hung around a little longer, you know.
Yeah.
But and you know, they just, people have a lot that they deal with that they don't reveal to others. And you know, I think that's one thing as a society we're starting to kind of grow on, where that you know, getting help is not a negative thing.
No, absolutely not. You know, I come from an addiction. I had a very addictive past. I was homeless at 18. And I think, like, you know, most people probably wouldn't know that unless I told them that. So why don't the people that are there now deserve a shot when they can turn their lives around and be something that serves the community? You know, I think as humans, we just want to like judge and put people in boxes because it makes it easier for us to cope with things.
Yeah.
You know? But I think every person, especially now, can like search their heart and find something that speaks to them. For me, it's homelessness. You know, the homeless. There's a lot of mental illness with people who are homeless, and there's a lot of just being forgotten and being judged. And I feel like, you know, anybody could be there in a second. You know what I mean? So that speaks to my heart. And there's always causes that speak to other people's hearts, but there's always something to get involved in that can help other people. You know what I mean? Because people do, you know, that's the biggest disease, I think, is like we have this idea that we have to be perfect, so we isolate or we don't tell people what's really going on.
Yeah.
We think we're perfect, and none of us are. You know, none of us. So.
No, that's for sure. And you know, and that's the problem. That's a problem with a certain aspect of media, especially the beginning of the century. There was that first decade and following into the last one was a real perfection decade. You have to look like this, you have to be such and such a size, and you have to be rich. You know, everybody's got to be rich, everybody's got to drive in, you know, the biggest car, and this idolism, this, you know, this whole pursuit of monetary things over emotional and you know, things. And I think we're starting to get to the point where we're starting to get to the point where we need to reject that and find something else, you know, that's real.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, the next 40, 50 years is a path to everyone coming together in a better way, because it's obvious we can't keep going on like this as a country, especially. Yeah, sorry for going on a little rant there.
No, I liked it. This is my kind of interview. So
yeah, these are my interviews. My interviews are never. So, what made you record this song? You know, it's like I don't know. I'm not that deep. I'm not that like statistic, and you know, it's like I don't want to ask every question that everybody's asked. You know, I want to go down a weird alleyway and see what's on the other side. You know.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. I like it.
Yeah, because it's the way my mind thinks, and I just figure that everybody else does the same kind of interview. So
yeah,
you know, let's just kind of, you know, I read about everybody, but I mean, pretty much once I start talking to somebody, I forget everything I read about anyway. So it doesn't matter.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Staying in the moment, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, you know, there's a lot of people I like as interviewers. One of my favorites is an odd one, and I haven't listened to him in a while, but probably one of my favorite interviews was always Howard Stern, because he was able to ask people questions, and he was a little more he's always more pointed, but he's able to ask people questions that definitely nobody's, you know, ever going to ask. But he's big in therapy, so he's started to ask at some point personal probing, you know, questions, and asking, you know, like, well, what was the thought process behind that, or what was your emotional instinct there? You know, it's almost like he's become a therapist and interviewer in a way.
God, I want to watch a Howard Stern interview.
Yeah, he's done a lot over the years. He's done a lot more interviewing over the years. Ever since he was on America's Got Talent, he's become more of a comfortable place to go for celebrities. It used to just be porn stars. But, you know, now it's everybody.
Yeah.
I think he had Hillary Clinton in there too at some point, which is, I'm thinking about Howard Stern in your head from the shock jock era, and that you would never see Hillary Clinton in that studio. But yeah,
it's funny you brought him up, because I think, was it Amazon I was on something the other day, and I saw Private Parts was on. I was like, I should rewatch that movie.
yeah.
I've seen that movie.
That's a fun movie. That is such a fun movie.
So good, just how he got there. And what's the guy's name that plays his boss? He's really
Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, he's so good.
That was his like big breakout role. He wouldn't have, I don't think he would have had the career he had if he wasn't in that movie.
He was great in that movie. He was cast so perfectly for that role.
Yeah. I had read the book too, so it's like when he came on screen, I'm like, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy that he wrote about in his book. It's like down to a T. But yeah, I mean, my thinking is I just kind of like to see where things go. And I'm interested in people generally. Like I've talked to people. This is a weird thing now, and I'm sorry to get off of myself.
No, do it.
I'm not just apologizing to you, but to my audience.
Oh, right on. Sorry.
Whoever it is too, because they're not necessarily here for me. But you talk about meeting Joan Jett being afraid. Well, back in the 90s, I went to the Lilith Fair with my ex-wife, and standing next to us in the second stage was Emmylou Harris. And I saw her, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Emmylou Harris. I said to my ex-wife. She goes, well, say hi. I'm like, no, I'm not saying hi to her. And then around the turn of the century, I decided that once the internet became a thing, I decided to start writing, and I started interviewing people. And oddly enough, one of the first people I interviewed was Jesse Malin, and him and I have become close over the years. But I've interviewed, I don't know how many hundreds of people by this point, and I have this weird dichotomy between being very antisocial and nervous around people, but able to do this for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's helpful for me, I think, because I'm not as bad as I used to be as being awkwardly social, but I'm still not great.
It's funny you say that. I feel that way about me, and then when I go on stage, they're like, you just seem like such a badass wild woman. I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty shy and introverted.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how that is, right? I've heard other people just describe going on stage, and it's like a transformation.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about going on stage that either pushes that part of you out of the way temporarily? I mean, I don't know. How much have you thought about that aspect where you are able to go on stage and perform to upwards of 25,000 people, but then are nervous around people outside of the stage?
Well, you have to like lose an entire section of your brain
when
you go out there, because the thinking shuts off for me, which is what's so glorious about it. And I don't do it consciously. It just happens when I get on stage, and the type of music we just wrote naturally brought us to that place. And I just want to, like, I always say this, I'm like, I hate to sweat. Since I was a kid, I'd be like, I don't want to do anything that's going to make me sweat. I just hate sweating. I'm not a sweater.
Me too.
Like,
I can't stand it.
But yet, like, I'll do a workout, and if I stay consistent with it, it's only because I don't even know I'm sweating. And that's what stage does for me. I get on stage, and I instantly know I'm in love and doing the thing I love. Is I am such a big wet ball of sweat at the end of it. And I go, it just, something breaks loose in you that is like all sense of right and wrong, morality, or like, I just grab people. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of I just pick people up. I don't even know what's going on in me. Like something turns off, or something turns on. Or both. But I love it. Like that. I miss that, because I was saying that, I said, I'm a little worried about not playing shows and how long I can go without that feeling or that freedom of getting there and doing that. You get lost in it. Like anytime you probably are in an interview you like, or you're writing something you love, there's moments where you get lost. And like when I'm writing, sometimes that happens. But for me, when I get on stage, it always happens. So that's a rare experience, I think, is just as a person to have something like that. So
I mean, a lot of people suffer stage fright and things, and and it takes it a lot for them to get up on a stage. And some people abandon touring. What is it, Andy Partridge from XTC? I mean, he couldn't deal with going on stage anymore, so XTC just stopped touring completely. It's like, it's like,
I mean, I definitely go through it before I go on stage. I've never gotten to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm completely calm. Like I do go into fight or flight. Like but I think I've accepted it as part of it at this point. Like it's just part of it. But once I'm up there, it's gone. It's only the anticipation of it. And then when it's actually happening, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I
have the same thing with interviewing. 5 minutes before the interview starts, I'm like, I can't do this.
How do I get out of it?
I'm going to cancel. And then I'm like, well, why would you take the time to set this up if you want if you're just going to, and if you cancel too many people, it's not going to look good. Like, so I have to fight with myself all the time about.
You're not alone.
Yeah. No, I know I'm not, it's like, it's a weird instinct. It's a weird, and I've done my share of soul searching. I know where a lot of that comes from. And that's one thing I've tried to work on as an adult and everything. So it's like, just like you said about growth and figuring out the next thing to do in your life and to reach that goal, basically. And, part of mine is to conquer certain fears, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know we're close to an hour already, but, I think I got us off track. And you mentioned briefly, working with little Steven. And you mentioned writing with him and everything. How has that relationship grown over the years?
He's somebody I just instantly had a strong affection for when I started, the first time we started talking. And he's always treated me like family. Yeah. And it never felt uncomfortable or weird or that he wanted something from me. I'm pretty intuitive with people, and he always felt safe and like home. So he's like one of those people I feel like is, I feel like I've known before at some point. That's how we met. And I feel like he had the same affection for me. He wanted to help me. He wanted to encourage me as an artist. I remember his coolest song of the year in 2016, I think it was our song Electrocutioner. I remember he called me. He's like, I wish I wrote that one with you. And I was like, that's the one. I came to you when you had just finished Darlene Love's record. And I just happened to stop by the studio that day because I was in New York for a passport or something. And I told him, I said, we're writing a song now you would love. And he said, all right, well, why haven't you finished it? Why haven't I heard it? And I said, because Travis sent me the music and it's so good, I can't think of a melody to it. And that it never happens. He goes, well, go home and finish it tonight. And when Steven Van Zandt says, go home and finish it tonight, you go home. Because I was going next day to the Darlene Love listening party at his studio. So I was like, I can't go back and be like, I didn't finish it. So I went that night, I finished it. I wrote it, finished it. And next day I was like, finish the song. And he was like, good. It wasn't a big deal to him, but it was like nobody can say that to me and make me do that, but him. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's always been that. But then, when he signed us and at the end of, I guess it was the end of 2016, he signed our back catalog, and then he signed us to do a new record. And he came in the studio and wrote Why for us. And we did that, and he produced it. And then he produced Wow, the cover of the Third Eye Girl, the Prince band song. And he was just always so patient with the band and respectful and considerate. And he always said to me, ZouZou, the song will tell you what it needs. You just got to listen. Yeah. What kind of mystical stuff is that? But then that was 2017. And now I understand after going to the studio in 20, I'm like, it does. It says, you hear, if you really listen, you can hear what the song needs. And it's not opinion even. It just kind of comes to you. And he's been my mentor. When we wrote together, I felt like I could be honest with him. we co-wrote Still I Rise together. We had gone in and I had written a song called I Am Rise. And he's like, this isn't a single. You got to top your last stuff. And so he took it and he reworked it. And we brought it to the bare bones basic of like, it was a song about Maya Angelou's Still I Rise poem. And I didn't want to call it Still I Rise. I didn't want to like rip off Maya Angelou. And he's like, why not?
Right.
It's a good title. You're not writing her poem. And I was like, that's true. And that was the summer that Charlottesville happened when we wrote that. So we co-wrote it together in his office and within a few hours. And then we went and he showed the band some stuff of like what it was and took it from there. So I feel like it's grown in terms of like, as I started out being an admirer and feeling like connected to him and listening to what he asked me to do, to, you know, trusting him more in terms of sharing artistically what I really thought. And he was always open to it. And, you know, he's not only encouraged the band, he's been a fan of the band. He's given us opportunities we wouldn't have had before. He's necessary in an artist's life. That's why it's like, once that's done for you, you want to do it for someone else. And when you have the capability to do it, you know, and he's always been honest with me. So it's a relationship that's kind of taught me what a good relationship is, you know? So he's been like a father, a brother, a friend, a producer, a co-writer, a mentor. He's worn many hats in my life. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I've really grown to appreciate him in a different way. I'm admittedly not the biggest Springsteen fan, you know, and so that, you know, but I've always known Little Steven. I think the first time I really knew who Little Steven was when he did, and this is going back, this is when he left the E Street Band and he did the song to Not Play in Sun City, South Africa.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the first time I'm hoping I'm not remembering that wrong, that he was the main catalyst of that. That was probably the first time, and I'm like, you know, that's because since the 60s, there's been political songs, but, you know, to have a song come out in the 80s that was that political, you know, was really wild. And he was way ahead of the curve, on addressing apartheid in South Africa in particular. And, you know, so I've always kind of, and then, you know, Silvio on The Sopranos, which I'm rewatching. I'm kind of like in a whole Little Steven like thing right at the moment, it seems. So it's fascinating to be able to get to talk to people that have been on this label.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm talking around Little Steven a lot all of a sudden. But yeah, his taste in music, I think, is fascinating. And I think that says a lot about the label and the people that he signs.
I do too. I think he's always, the first meeting we ever had, he heard a song of mine. This producer I was working with, who worked with Bon Jovi, Steven showed up at a Bon Jovi show. So this was 2010. And our producer gave him the song that I co-wrote called Runaround at the time. And it was, if you ever heard Gloria, well, of course you heard Gloria. It was a lot like that musically, but obviously the song was about something else. And he gave it to Steven, and Steven said, he goes, I think this would be right up your alley, which I didn't even know Steven had a radio station at this point. I just knew him as Silvio, and I knew he played with the E Street Band, and, you know, his legacy had come before him, but I wasn't very familiar with his involvement in rock and roll's lifeline, like so much. And so I was like, sure, you know, like he gave it to him, and he said, and Steven had said to him, like, if I don't call you, it's nothing personal. It's not that she's bad. It's just not my thing. And, you know, like the next day he called our producer, and Steven probably still doesn't know this, but our producer put him on speakerphone, and I listened. He dialed me on another. Anyway, it was complicated. I heard the whole conversation, which was completely wrong, but I did. And he was just like, who is this? And does she want this as a career? Or is this just like a one-off thing? Or anyway, I went and met him like a few days later at his studio at Renegade. And I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know why I was there at all. And he just started, he spent 3 hours with me just talking to me about what do I really want. And he watched our videos on a screen with me. And he's like, this is very different than your other stuff. Like you don't seem to have you seem to have very musical you don't fit anywhere. And I was like,
Right.
just write, what we write. And we just are riff based, Travis writes a riff and I sing something to it and we build a song from that. And he's like, if you write more songs like this one, I'd like to hear them. And that started our relationship. But he told me about like European audiences versus American audiences and how they're different, how they are with albums versus songs. I learned a lot. And the whole time I had this running back thought that was like, why am I here? Like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Yeah. And, he didn't sign me. I mean, I ended up working with John Bon Jovi after that for like 3 years. And then Steven came like right after that ended. He showed up at a show of mine in New York and he produced a live show for us over a month period of time. And we did that. And then he signed us about a year later. Yeah. But he was interested in my writing. So he took an interest in me pretty early. And I kept sending him ideas and things we were doing, and I just stayed in touch, and not out of like feeling like, I feel like a lot of relationships before with me were like, this person can do something for me. It was weird. And then those relationships fell away and I met people like Steven and they just were naturally what they were. Nobody forced anything. And it's, I feel like that's who I was supposed to be with from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like even now, like, he let us go in, he hears our stuff, he gives us production notes and we go in and he's not there, and anytime he gives us production notes, the song is like a million times better. So it works. Like he lets us be the artists we are, but he also guides us. He tells us what our consistent maybe blocks are. And he says it in a kind and loving way, which is, I haven't met a lot of that. So
yeah. Well, that's the general consensus I've gotten on him, is that he's a guiding spirit and a helpful one, not a negative force in anyone's life, and that's rare for any record label, even on the smaller side, like like his is. It's a rare thing, and it's another reason why I've had blossoming and admiration for him over the last several years, because I keep hearing positive things about his guidance.
And he really, like, not to like bolster it up or anything, but he's really an outspoken advocate for rock and roll aside from humanitarian causes.
Yeah.
I feel he's always been for the underdog, it seems to me, and also for when they have something to say. He's always looked at people equally. He's treated people exactly the same in my experience of him, but he's a hardcore fighter for rock and roll. Like, he doesn't want the roots of rock and roll to go away. And I don't know who else is doing. I think like maybe Jack White's doing that a bit with his label. I'm trying to think of other labels that I think that are actually like really built on the integrity of where rock and roll came from.
Yeah.
As contributing to where it's going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's necessary to have these people, because in my opinion, because there's a lot of rock bands out there. I'm not saying rock is dead. I'm not saying that at all. But I think we've entered a phase where rock is fast approaching jazz, as far as you're going to find there's an audience for it, but it's might not be the same thing it used to be. And I don't know what it takes for rock to get to grab hold and become a cultural force again. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe these things are cyclical, and maybe it'll always be a form that we know of, and it'll have its people out there like you guys or whoever comes up next that keep putting it out there, and maybe it's just a thing that we that gets appreciated on a certain level, but pop is maybe the what it is. Pop will be the art, but who knows? People have got to get tired of hearing the same style of pop music. I mean, I feel like nothing's changed much since Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys in the late 90s. I feel like it's all basically the same. It just new, but then people could say that about rock, I guess, too. I don't know.
Well, I think it's hopeful. I mean, I think it always depends on what for me, it's like whatever I'm attracted to at that time, I think is probably based my reality rather than what reality really is.
Yeah.
think that rock is just doing, like, I see bands like the Struts coming around, even though they've gone, like, I think they're still melodic, but they have rock elements to them. And like, and I think they're a rock band at heart. You know what I mean? So I go like, but then again, that's just my, again, sphere of influence. I know that people are really into them, and a lot of reminders of the look of Queen and the vibe of Queen. But at the same time, like, I think that if people didn't know those bands or admire those bands, where would we be now? So, or where would bands like that be now? So it's like, you know, I'm always hopeful for all that. And I always think no matter what, rock is that fighting spirit, like that. It's not going to go away. That's for sure.
No, I don't, like I said, I don't think it's going to go away. I just, I wonder about its impact on, it's been interesting because the internet has really ground things into certain corners, and it's allowed a lot more people to be heard.
Yeah.
But there's also not that seismic shift of something new culturally with regards to music that seems to come out. But it always, I mean, there are people that come out of nowhere. It's just, you know, there's not that scene thing, you know, like like what, you know, whatever, like British Invasion or the Seattle grunge thing, or there's nowhere for it to bubble up because it's always everywhere. Everything's always everywhere now. You know, it's like if it exists, you can find it. Maybe more people get onto it as time goes on, but I don't know. I still haven't quite figured out my thought process on this whole thing.
Neither. It's a good place to be, probably. You like rock. That's what matters.
Yeah. All right. Well, I figure that's a good place to end. I think we ended on a positive note. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And I really wish you guys the best of luck and hope to see you perform either live stream or live in the near future. Make sure you guys stay safe. Okay.
You too. Take care of yourself, Brett.
All right. Take care. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.